This diagram, the reason I like to hand out this diagram is because as Cursillo leaders, as Cursistas, we need to understand that everything that we are and everything that we do in Cursillo comes from a school of leaders. Everything. And if you read around the circle, everything, all these things should come from a school of leaders. And you notice that the secretariat comes from the school of leaders. So we're all one. You know, the secretariat is not a different movement, or the school is not separate from the movement. We're all one. You know, so we all collaborate with each other. And you notice the word friendship also comes from the school. The Cursista who came in from Canada to give that talk on why we have Cursillos at the National Encounter, the last sentence of her talk was, if there is no friendship, there is no Cursillo. Period. She ended her talk with those words. If there is no friendship, there is no Cursillo. You know, you can have everything in place. You can have the group reunions going on, the Ultreas, the School of Leaders, the 3-day weekends, everything going through all the motions. But if there's no friendship, basically, that's what we're doing. We're going through the motions. And it's so true, you know. Okay, so this talk is on the School of Leaders, and we'll go through the other handout in a minute. Historically speaking, the School of Leaders existed before the very first Cursillo region was held. How about that? The School of Leaders in the 1940s existed before the Cursillo. The Cursillo movement didn't just happen. It's not a bright idea that somebody came up with. It is a result of a long process of reflection, thought, and commitment by the founder, Eduardo Bonin, and of course he had some friends that he was sharing with. You know, he had a group of friends, and he goes on to say, Eduardo Bonin received the gift of the charism from the Holy Spirit, but he needed to share that inspiration with some of his friends, and together they put the flesh on the bones, which today we know as Cursillos in Christianity. The real author of all the royals except the ideal royal is Eduardo. You know where the ideal royal came from? Catholic Action. Catholic Action, yeah. Because Catholic Action back in the 1940s, they were actually having cursillos, but not as we know it today, because the word cursillo in Spanish translates to short course, right? So Catholic Action was doing cursillos even before Cursillos in Christianity. And Eduardo just happened to be invited to participate in Catholic Action. He didn't want to, because Catholic Action was for one special group of men, one class of men. And so Eduardo looked at him and said, this is a little private club here going on. Some good things were going on, but he says, what we need is something that is for all classes. You know, so that's how Cursillos in Christianity came to be. It all began with this group of friends. In fact, that is what a school of leaders is, a group of friends. And you know, in our school, in every school really, this applies to every school, there are some people that are more friends with their friends than with others. And that's kind of a normal thing. You know, some people know Robin better than I do. Some people know Pat and Dominga better than, than someone else. But Cursillo focuses on friendship with everyone. With everyone. We cannot exclude anyone. Let's talk about first about what the School of Leaders is not. It's not, because there's a lot of tendency to adapt the school to make it something that it is not. The term school of leaders is one that seems to cause a lot of confusion and heartache. So let us explore what the name means and what the school is in the Cursillo mentality. Both words in the title seem to cause equal misunderstanding. The first word is school and the second word leaders. So we'll talk about this for a minute. The word school tends to bring up visions of students sitting at their desk listening to a lecture, someone giving a lecture, or someone teaching something, or someone providing an instruction. In the context of Cursillo, though, nothing could be further from the truth. It is not and never has been a school where someone, such as a veteran Cursillista, shares acquired knowledge. At the workshop in Lockhart, those of you that were there, I shared a quote from G.K. Chesterton. Remember that? He says, being reminded is better than being instructed. Being reminded is better than being instructed. So when you come to a workshop like this, or you go to regional, or you go to national, there's no instruction. We are being reminded of who we are and what Cursillo is about. So that's what we're doing today, Alan and I, and you as you share at the tables. We are reminding each other as to who we are and what we're called to be as Cursillo leaders in the movement. In the context of Cursillo, though, we are referring to a school of thought. Remember Alan talked about simplify? The school of leaders is a school of thought, a school of ideas, because during the Cursillo weekend, they gave us 15 ideas to bring home. Remember? 5 ideas every day. Friday, 5, Saturday, 5, Sunday, 5. So we are people with ideas. Together, they explore and deepen their understanding and gain wisdom and insight from one another. What we're looking for in the School of Leaders is for a unity of purpose and understanding of what Cursillo is. A unity of purpose and understanding of what Cursillo is. That's what we're trying to achieve in the school. How many times have you and I heard, I am not a leader, from some Cursillistas, right? They'll flat out tell you, hey, when you invite them to come to school, hey, don't look at me, I'm not a leader. Being a leader has nothing to do with being in charge of something, such as being president of an organization or chairperson of a committee. In the Cursillo mentality, we say that anyone can be a leader. As a matter of fact, we were told on our weekend, you, everyone in here, is a leader. As a matter of fact, we were told that in the Cursillo. Being a leader is more than who you are. It's more about who you are than what you do. More about who you are than what you do. If you look at any schoolyard, this is interesting. If you look at any schoolyard, it's easy to see and pick out the kids who are the natural leaders. You know, they've got the other little kids following them. You know, one of the little kids is usually the leader going to the slide or to the swing or to whatever it is that they're doing. But usually one of the little kids is at the head of the line, leading the rest of them. And the rest of them, they're happy to follow, you know. The rest of the children look to them for direction. They seem to lead the group. No one has appointed them to be the leader. They just have that kind of natural personality. It's just a natural built-in ability. Therefore, belonging to the School of Leaders does not make one a leader. And similarly, all the leaders are not necessary in the school. And we see that, right? In fact, some of the best leaders may never attend School of Leaders. And the reasons for not doing so are their own. We can't force them, we can't manipulate them, we can't coerce them. They don't want to, they can't come or do not want to come, that's fine. If this is the case, we should never make a person feel guilty because we feel that they should be attending school. The important thing is that Everyone should feel free to enthusiastically make their contribution wherever they are. To God's church, to Christ and His church. Make your contribution wherever you are. Wherever God calls them, and only the person and God can know where that is. Again, it's important to realize that we are not a leader because we are members of the school. If we are in School of Leaders, it is because we are already leaders. We are already leaders, or have the potential to be a leader in our ordinary lives. The school is not a place for the elite, but a place where each person wants to offer their very best for the sake of Cursillo. In some areas, the School of Leaders consists of a short meeting held in preparation for the next 3-day weekend. This is not a school. An authentic school is not an event. It exists whether there's a meeting or not. The School of Leaders is a group of friends working for the good of the movement, studying together, praying together, living what is fundamental together, making friends together, making Christian community together. Every movement needs a core group of leaders who have dedicated themselves to deepening their understanding of Cursillo. These people want to get to the bottom of the mentality, the essence, the purpose, and the method because they want to understand the why of things. Every movement has a handful of core leaders, described as core leaders, that keep the movement going. Come on, guys. Let's go to school. Come on, guys. Let's do this. Come on, guys. Let's have a workshop. Come on, guys. Let's plan the next weekend. But that core seems to be like those little children that are leading the rest of the group. But Christ called every one of us to be leaders. Every one of us sitting in the School of Leaders, every one on the Secretariat is called to contribute, to participate, to give of himself. This core group of leaders acts as a leaven within the larger community in a very natural and ordinary way. The fact is, they understand Cursillo, and they get it. When you think of an experienced cook or a chef, like Mary and George, experienced chefs, for the most part, they don't need recipes. You know, they know what tools they're going to need, what pots and pans, and what ingredients they're going to need, and they get after it. Boy, they make you a fantastic meal, like the one we're going to have today. The same is true for well-schooled leaders in the movement. We shouldn't need recipes, ingredients, although Cursillo gives us all the tools that we need, right? It gives us all the tools we need. But what the Cursillo movement needs is well-schooled leaders. As leaven within the movement, they do not teach by preaching, but rather by being living witnesses to the very essence of the charism. Again, going back to that quote from Chesterton, it is better to be reminded than to be instructed. No one in Cursillo goes to the group reunion in Utrea or the School of Leaders to receive instruction. No one. All we're doing is sharing ideas and giving witness of how we are living those ideas based on Christ and Cursillo. There's no hierarchy in Cursillo, no careers, no ranks, no certificates, diplomas, bachelor degrees or master degrees. The only career that each one of us has is with ourselves. Period. We're each called to a different vocation, and reaching our own potential is the best we can do. The School of Leaders is not a 3-day Cursillo factory, nor a Royista university. Somebody asked the founder, Eduardo, which royals should the rector give, or the rectora? He said, they should give the royals that they're living. He said, because the royals are not necessarily for giving, but for giving, for living. Not necessarily for giving, but for living. That's how he responded. So now that we covered what the school is not, let's cover what the School of Leaders is. The school, as I mentioned before, is a group of friends that individually and collectively have faith in Christ. They have placed him in the axis of their person to let him lead their lives, and they identify with Cursillo movement and live Cursillo with constancy in their personal life. And collectively, these leaders want the love of God to reach to as many people as possible. The School of Leaders want to be part of Christianity in action. Christianity in action. You know, a lot of times, one of the talks that we used to have was called Christian community. You remember that? And now it became Christianity in action. A Christian community is good, and the church teaches that, you know, that we should be a Christian, live as Christian communities. But sometimes a Christian community tends to turn on within. They're concerned that all of us are feeling okay, we're meeting our needs, but it's an inward effort. For some reason, the community tends to turn inward. Christianity in action is the opposite. It's outward. It's a journey outwards to serve the other person, to love God, to love neighbor, and to love ourselves. So there's a little bit of a difference that between Christian community and Christianity in action. The school is first and foremost the place where the leaders learn to deepen their own understanding of living what is fundamental to being Christian. And I think I've talked to you in School of Leaders that's been one of my top concerns, is that when those new Cursistas leave the weekend, do they know what is meant by living what is fundamental to being Christian? If we do a poll and ask people, Cursistas, coming off the weekend, do you know what that term means, living what is fundamental to being Christian? I almost can guarantee you that most of them will say, nope, I can't answer that question, but I'm going to try to do the best I can. I'm going to try to live like a Christian. Okay? But Cursillo gives us all the tools, you know. To live what is fundamental to being Christian is to live a life in Christ, to live a life in grace, to live the sacraments, to live a life in faith, to live as church, the mystical body of Christ, and on and on. All that is part of living what is living and sharing of what is fundamental to being Christian. The Beatitudes, and you can go on and on, you know, but it takes a while for us to get there. And I'll read this again because I think it's a profound statement from the founder. The leaders in the school can best be described as the keepers of the flame of the vision of the founder, not my vision, not National's vision, not Regional's vision, but the vision of the founder, keeping it burning brightly as a beacon for all those whose paths are illuminated by its light. The vision of the founder is what? The charism. The charism. And the charism, if you can imagine this beacon flooding light on the path that we as leaders and as Christians should be following. Illuminating the path for others. Somebody mentioned John the Baptist this morning. You know, I think it was you, Dominga. He was, what's the words that they use?
Radical.
He was opening the way or leading, preparing the way. I think it's the way it says, preparing the way for the Lord, right, for Jesus. And the same thing, the charism. We're preparing the way for those who are coming into a relationship with Christ. So what's the objective of the school? The School of Leaders must encourage contact with the best, those who are in state of grace, those who have faith. God does not call the qualified, but he qualifies the ones he calls. You've heard that before, right?
Yeah.
In the study of the Environment Royal, which was the very first Royal in Cursillo, we say that no one can do everything, but everyone can do something. This recognizes that there are some people who are better suited to know, others that are better suited to serve, and others that are better suited to love. The idea is for each individual to find a way to give his best according to his abilities and capabilities, though, of course, we are all called to know, to love, and to serve the Lord. The field of action of the school is the full scope of Cursillo. It's charism. It involves every bit of the charism. The pre-Cursillo, the 3 days, the post, the secretary, school of leaders. It is a question of giving meaning and content to the Ultrea, the pre-Cursillo, the 3-day, and the post-Cursillo. Now, on one of the handouts, on this one, I'll give you a handout. I'm fixing to give you the definition of the school according to the Structure of Ideas book. One of the handouts that I'm going to give you in a little bit has that definition, so you don't have to write this down. Here's what the School of Leaders says according to Eduardo Bonin. The School of Leaders is the gathering or reunion of leaders that illuminates, encourages, and relives our restlessness with the best means possible, which is friendship. It is the place where leaders are in tune with the same spirit, following a common criteria, where our apostolic nature is spontaneous. It is not preached, but lived together, and it is where the truth is foremost, because we all wish it, and we all live it. Another profound definition from the founder. We need to study that in the school too. Break it down, break it apart. What is he trying to tell us? So I'll give you the handout that has this definition in a minute. The School of Leaders is an environment of friendship that fosters unity, spiritual growth, technical preparation of its members, all of which must translate into service towards others, basing it on the essence, purpose, mentality, and method of Cursillo. The purpose of the school. The first one is to make friends in our reunions. Alan mentioned that the first thing the secretary does is to have group reunion, right? Same thing in the school. First thing we do is to have group reunion. Second is to make friends with Christ. Friendship is a characteristic of Christ because being a friend is a form of love. The purpose is to know the method of Cursillo. The School of Leaders is not an educational institution. We are not teachers because we do not impart knowledge of science or arts. We are leaders because we have influence over our environments. As for the method, theology and psychology come together in Cursillo by using living the gospel and using some common sense. I think I've talked to you about gospel and common sense. Back in 2006, when I went to Mallorca, met with Eduardo Bonin for 1 week. One of the very last things that I remember that he said was, "You have asked me a lot of questions, just like the other groups that come to visit me. They ask me a ton of questions. And the last thing I impart to them is that for them to live the gospel, number one, and to use common sense when you have to." So, boy, I couldn't wait to come back to the United States to tell you guys. Guess what Eduardo said? Live the gospel and use common sense. But then I thought about it. As I visited around the United States and the different dioceses, and I told them that, they gave me examples of their common sense. Because I asked them, I specifically asked, well, can you give me an example of how you're using common sense? And this one Cursista, very sincere, very honest, said, well, we had, at our Ultreas, we're starting to have a lot of parishioners that are not Cursistas. So I didn't want to make them uncomfortable with the group reunion. So what we did, she was the post-Cursillo chair. What I did is I took away the grouping at Ultrea. Oops. red flag, right? But, I said, hey, thank you for sharing. Thanks for your sincerity, because I know she was being very sincere in what she was saying. I said, but I don't think that's what the founder meant by using common sense. I said, let me tell you what. I said, is it really necessary to remove the group when in reality what we share at the Ultrea is not a secret, number one. Secondly, what we share at the Ultrea is what's in our heart, in our minds, in our will, which is our piety, study, and action. Do those parishioners have a mind, a heart, and a will? Yes, they do, she said. Okay, so what do you think? She says, okay, I'm going to put the group back. She says, but I'm finishing up my term, so I'm just going to tell the next person that replaces me, post-Cursillo chair, to do whatever they want. No. So anyway, so I got responses like that, and I said, whoops, I can't just drop these two things on people, especially, live the gospel is pretty common sense for them. But the word common sense itself has many interpretations, can have many interpretations, so we have to be careful with that part. Anyway, attitude and aptitude of the leaders. One is not a leader by the mere fact of being in the school. On the contrary, one is in the school because we're already a leader. Being a Cursillo leader is a concrete vocation. Oops, concrete vocation. Oh my goodness, when I said that at Cursillo de Cursillos, I was walking around and I said, did you know that the Cursillos in Christianity is a vocation? And the lady sitting there says, she screamed out, oh, you're scaring me. I said, how am I scaring you? She said, you just said that Cursillo is a vocation. I said, yes ma'am, that's exactly what I said. Cursillo is a calling. It is a vocation. So she got frightened by that. I think it was the first time it was clarified for her that it is a call. If you're in Cursillo, it's because God has called you to be a leader in Cursillo. And no one else knows that except you and God. And that's why we asked a priest from Philadelphia to give us a talk, where was it? 2 years ago at one of the national encounters on prayer and discernment. Because I told Father Myers, I said, Father Myers, could you come give us a talk on prayer and discernment? I said, because we as Cursillistas, all of us pretty much know how to pray. But most of us do not know how to discern. We don't know what that term means. So we need somebody to explain that to us. And he did. He did a nice job. And by the way, that talk is on the national website, in case you want to read it. So the attitude and aptitudes, it's about having a psychological maturity. What does that mean? There must be harmony between the mind, the heart, and the will. We need to have an attitude of understanding and the willingness to give Christ what He is asking of us. Authenticity. Being Christian has nothing to do with preaching, but striving to be who one is. Being authentic means developing a capacity for a real encounter with the other person. Sincerity. Eduardo Bonin said that sincerity is the receptacle of the truth. Sincerity is the receptacle of the truth. Be honest, be respectful towards others. Integrity. Christian integrity means that the Christian horizon exceeds every adversity, however great. It means to persevere. In times of great adversity is when the leader must be Christian. And the other aptitude or attitude is a capacity for awe, capacity of wonder. To maintain a sense of wonder, we need to listen to the person who has a need to talk. Find the right words at the right time. Apostolic effectiveness. It is best to call it an achievement rather than a success. Success involves applause. Who mentioned that all ago? Alan, you talked about paddling back and applause. Success involves applause and maybe even an encore. You ready, Alan?
Sure, what do you want?
Achievement implies attainment. Achievement implies attainment. We must have faith to abandon ourselves into the hands of God. Okay, so let's move on to the sessions of the school. So look at your handout that has the 6 items, elements of the school. And we'll quickly go through this because you're used to doing this in school. Of course, we're going to begin with prayer, and we open with the leader's prayer. Then we move into the group reunion, which is different than the friendship group reunion, and we have different questions that are being asked, and basically challenging each leader on about what contributions we're making in the movement, in the pre-Cursillo, the 3-day Cursillo, and the post-Cursillo. Then a priest or a deacon comes up to give us the doctrinal rollo, and this helps us, our progressive conversion as leaders, through an explanation of the use and means of deepening our relationship with God. Then someone will come up and give the technique rollo, like the ones that Alan and I have been doing today. Those are technique rollos. And then the sections break up into 3 groups, the pre-Cursillo, 3-day, post-Cursillo, to evaluate where we are in the pre-Cursillo, 3 days, and post, and to understand what the needs are. And then the last thing is the chairs of the sections come up to the front to report to the rest of the school so that we all understand where we are as a movement. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Oh, and there's a copy of the Leaders Group Reunion in the back. Okay. And then, of course, what we should be studying in school is the official Cursillo literature, such as the Leader's Manual, Study of the Charism, Cursillo Manual, Structure of Ideas, First Conversations, Whom Shall I Send, My Spiritual Testament, and on and on and on. There's a ton of books, and there's even more in English today than there were 10 years ago. So please, we need to start studying these books in school. I think I mentioned in our school of leaders that we have a revised English translation of First Conversations. A revised translation, which reads better. It's a better translation. So what I suggested at our school is that we take each one of those topics and have a discussion at school. Because those 10 topics of the First Conversations are actually part of our charism. So we have to understand what that is. And I can supply you with the each individual talk that comes in that book for study in the school. So Alan, if you need it for your school, I can supply you with the individual Word documents for each topic. Okay? And there's 10 topics. Of course, you've heard about the Cursillo Resource Center on the national website. That's where we place all the technique talks and audio talks and some videos. And thanks to George this year, he videotaped, I think, all of the talks, right?
All of
the
the
national
talks,
camera.
yes. Everything that took
And they're going to
place.
be posted on the national website. So please go to the Resource Center on the website, download it. There's a ton of information at the Resource Center for School of Leaders discussion. Tons. So in conclusion, the School of Leaders is a school of thought, remember that, and reflection that should bring the leaders to a unity of purpose and understanding of the foundational charism. And everybody, I think I said it in one of the school sessions, everyone in the school, no one needs permission to speak. Everyone can speak freely and can speak their ideas and their thoughts. So, it's not about me or Alan or Robbie standing up here and doing all the talking. It's about us contributing, sharing the ideas that are being exposed, put in front of us, so that all of us come to a unity and purpose of understanding. The school is open to the Cursillistas who may be restless and wish to put their effort and dedication at the service of the movement. And here's a quote from Eduardo just to finish up. The key to the school's success is that to the greatest extent possible, the leaders seek, through dialogue, to be of one mind, to provide a balanced focus on pre-Cursillo, 3 days, and post-Cursillo, and to do so in such a way that it is real, that is, lived and shared at a level and depth that is understandable. This can be accomplished by sharing what one lives and making it as natural as possible, so this brings an authentic sharing. Declores.